Okay. Um, it is now 06:55, October 22nd, 2018, Monday morning, and I want to touch on about some stuff that's going on that I haven't spoken about in these videos. Um, I'm still being microwaved heavily, heated. My head, my back, um, specifically the most. They're using microwave mind control frequencies, microwave level frequencies to control, influence my behavior, my mood, um, severe depression, agitation. Um, the other day, they've been trying to keep me awake at night only. Um, they're messing with my sleep patterns to do this, and the point of that is mainly so that I'm around less people when I'm awake. Um, there are less people to see what they're doing to me. I'm more isolated because today or yesterday I woke up in the afternoon. I was gonna mow the lawn, and I walked outside. As soon as I did, they hit me with the worst anxiety attack, one of the worst I've ever had in my whole life, and I could tell that it was being induced artificially. I could tell just from the severity. It came out of nowhere. It lasted the whole time I was outside until I finally just went back inside and got into bed and slept for the rest of the day. So they're actively trying to keep me awake at night and asleep during the day. And they've been doing this for weeks. This is not the first time in my life they've been doing that. They do that to my mom. They do that to me. Um, so yeah, it's a common thing that they do. Okay, so the thing I wanted to talk about is an experimental technology they're developing now, and they're actually maybe it's not in the experimental phase anymore. It's in they're actually applying it, but to not too many people they're using it on, and it's a way using these UAVs and particle emitters. It's a remote gene splicing technology that they use on people. They target their DNA, and they splice them with the DNA samples they have of other individuals. They're doing this to my mom regularly. They started that heavily this year. They call it coding. That's what it's known as, colloquially to them. That's what they refer to it as, and they can change someone's appearance almost instantly, pretty much instantly, by splicing it with the DNA of other individuals. They can change someone's facial features. I've seen this happen to my mom on multiple occasions, even back in 2015. Um, at its most extreme, one example is earlier this year in the spring, before the summer. I was talking to my mom in the kitchen, and this has happened on more than one occasion, but this time was the worst. I watched her face. I was talking to her, and her facial expression, her eyes, they aged her physically about 20 years. About 20 years. And I believe what they did was they took they have a sample of my grandmother's DNA on file, who they murdered, and they spliced it with her because she resembled my late grandmother. Her eyes where the iris was, they had a white ring around it, like you know how some people that are older, they get that. Her face was wrinkled and looked like my grandmother. Her face had completely changed. It looked like she was aged 20 years, and this lasted for about 20 seconds, and then she turned and faced me, and she was normal again. This has happened multiple times, and that time she sighed like she was in physical pain as she changed back. It is not a pleasant experience for that to happen to you. One of her friends is a target of remote gene splicing technology as well, and they target the DNA in the individual's spinal cord, their spinal column. That's what they target. This may be done in involvement with local labs that work in genetics, such as Amgen or Zymogenetics, if they're still around. I'm not sure. but it is being used on multiple people that I know, possibly more, but I haven't confirmed it. But these two women, they're being experimented on. One of them is my mother. They're doing performing genetic experiments on her against her will, using these UAVs or drones. The U.S. Air Force is, in cooperation with the Central Intelligence Agency. This is fucking heinous. These are gross violations of human rights, and they need to fucking stop. They've also spliced her DNA with other individuals who I've met or have seen before. But I want to touch on some other things, particularly the Las Vegas shooting hoax that was conducted last year. I believe it was done using Department of Homeland Security. They conduct many of these hoaxes. And this is known far and wide, but very few people are actually speaking up about it publicly. Because there's, okay, I'm being threatened right now by the Army intelligence officer using voice to skull. But anyway, it was conducted, it was clearly a hoax. Clearly a hoax. If you look at the cell phone footage taken from the quote-unquote shooting itself, I mean, it's just so fucking obvious. These crisis actors, they're not doing very well at all. You see the guy run off stage, and you see a guy talking about fake gunshots. The automatic fire you hear in these videos is piped in. It's piped in. The ricochet, the automatic fire. It sounds like an Colt M16 type weapon, M4, fully auto. You hear the ricochets and shit like that. You hear screaming. But you also see in one video people ducking and running, hiding on the floor. But then you see like a guy with a cowboy hat standing to the side, and a couple other people just casually standing there, drinking, alcohol, like nothing's going on. Okay, it's fucking painfully obvious. There's also, with all the ricochets and the gunfire you hear in these videos, you don't see one person getting hit. You don't see one person bleeding. There's no blood, nothing like that. If there's as many people as they say that died during this, why does the number keep growing as the reports go on? Why does the number keep changing? Why don't you see anyone getting hit with that amount of people? See, you would have to compensate pretty hard firing from the Mandalay Bay. And through all those videos, dude, I see no muzzle flash from that building, from Mandalay Bay. I actually stayed there in 2012 on a trip in that very hotel, the only time I ever have. You see no muzzle flash in any of the videos. None. You would have to compensate pretty well, because with a Colt like an M16, M4, that's outside of its effective range, maximum effective range. You'd have to be a pretty good shot, and you hear those rounds ricochet. You can hear what sounds like it, but nothing's being hit. No person, no object is being hit at all. Okay? That was a hoax. No one died. The only footage that came from the so-called, the body of the suspected shooter, that was edited. It was doctored. It was done up. It was a fucking, like a set, and it was pretty obvious, dude, that they did that, and those photos were edited. Okay, they were shot. Stuff like that. It was all a hoax. Same with, just like Sandy Hook was. Okay, these are crisis actors. And it's not to say that these things don't happen, that mass shootings don't happen often. They do. They do happen. But when they do, this is a phenomena that started in the mid-90s. You didn't hear about school shootings before that. The mass shooters that you hear about in the news that happen, these are people who are heavily mind-controlled by the CIA. They are intentionally stalked heavily and mind-controlled into doing this stuff. Okay? It's done intentionally by the Central Intelligence Agency. And that's how they do it. Nobody in the right mind, even if they do feel like doing it, who is going to go and fire on a school full of children? Who is going to do that? A victim of mind control, heavy mind control. Okay? And the reason they do that is to make it the most heinous type of shooting possible, where they target children, mostly. And I'll tell you why they're doing this. They've been working on it for decades. Because they are trying to disarm the American public and enact stricter gun laws. And why they are doing that? Well, let's look at all these incidents, all these signs that have been happening. Since 2012, 2013, they've been selling MRAPs and other military vehicles and equipment to police departments. Why do they want them? Why do they change the uniform code to all black? Why do they look like now paramilitary? Why are police killing people left and right over nothing? Over just failure to comply. Using lethal force regularly in response to failure to comply as policy. These policies are being encouraged by the police academies and by the departments. And it goes up to the Department of Justice all the way up to the top of the CIA. They're trying to instill fear in people. To fear the police departments, to give them these weapons, to act like an occupying force, like an army, the military, basically. They are trying to enact martial law, basically, a police state. They are working on disarming and dividing us. They are openly encouraging division and dissent, conflict among the people, along the lines of race, along the lines of political affiliation, along the lines of belief systems, along the lines of class, along the lines of anything you can think of. Interests. Your own interests. All the way down to anything, man. Just anything they can to try to divide us and turn us against each other. Divide and conquer strategy. A public that is not united. A populace that is not united, that is divided, that is disarmed, unable to defend themselves against tyranny. A populace that is brainwashed and fearful. A populace that is starved for resources, the recession. They are most vulnerable to this type of thing. That is what they want. And they're really microwaving me right now. They're heating me. They're right above my house, these UAVs. What I'm saying is true. They are trying to divide and conquer. They are targeting these patriot groups heavily. They want anybody who's resisting to basically give up, or they'll kill them, or incarcerate them. Our prisons are packed full of people, mostly, for the most part, minorities. For the overwhelming majority, most of them come from poverty. Okay. Many have been put on the route that they went on because of their situation, because they have no opportunities, and that's where they want to put you. If you're not with them, you can go to hell. That is their attitude. All right? They don't care. They're trying to enact total control over us. Surveillance everywhere. The Patriot Act. 9/11 was done with the intent, by the CIA, with the intent of using it as an excuse to enact things like the Patriot Act and other, basically make us fearful enough to turn to our leaders and hand them our rights in return for a false sense of security against a threat that does not exist. The threat that they are describing to us, terrorism, they are the terrorists. Alright? This is what they're doing. They want total control over us. And guess what? It's not working so well. These celebrities that are dying left and right, they're even killing off celebrities now because they threaten to speak out, or they do, or they know too much. That is why they've been killing them so much with directed energy. They're murdered, and they set it up to look like a suicide. They drive them through mind control into being suicidal so that they take their lives, like Robin Williams. They induce a heart attack using charged particle emitters, which is all these UAVs, most of them are armed with. By inducing a heart attack. They've come close to doing it on me. Aneurysm, stroke, setting up a car accident. They can take over the controls of your car, the steering mechanism, even if it's not a new car. There's a lot of things that they do to kill these people. Most common one is heart. Inducing a heart attack. So, yeah, that's what these events are all about. They're orchestrated with the intent of causing fear, spreading fear. That is terrorism, by definition. State-sponsored terrorism.